This is the biggest protest that we had at least since 43 years ago. They are looking for freedom, they are looking for dignity. They see the regime as a terrorist which doesn't have any moral principles and wants to make an Islamic world, not just an Islamic Iran. They use physical torture, psychological torture, and even sexual torture. Some reports from inside the detention centers that they raped women, men, and children. We don't need to look for suicide bomb to understand that there is a terrorist group in a country. If America wants to have a deal with the regime, it means that they are fighting against the people of Iran, and they mustn't do it.
The Iranian regime is facing the most serious uprising in decades. Widespread protests erupted after a young woman died while being held by the country's morality police in September, and the protests have been continuing. A human rights group estimates that hundreds have been killed as the Iranian ruler cracks down on the protests. Mary Mohammadi is a Christian and a human rights activist from Iran. She was detained there several times herself for her human rights work. I'm Steve Lance, filling in for Paul Graney this week. Mary Mohammadi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Mary, right now we're seeing a lot of civil unrest, what some might refer to as protests inside of Iran. If you could give us a little bit of background as to what is happening there.
I would like to give you a quick summary that what happened in Iran. Since the revolution in 1979, many people and many political groups who were already fighting against the previous regime, they knew that the Islamic Republic is not a good alternative, and they kept fighting against the regime, but the regime suppressed all of them severely. After a while, because the pressure was not just on political activists and not just on the opposition, even on ordinary people, the regime knew if they want to keep on in this way, they cannot stay in power for many years. So they decided to deceive the people in many ways. One of them was reformism. They claimed that maybe if we reform, maybe the regime will grant a little bit freedom to the people. But from the beginning, it was obvious that it's not possible, because we don't need to experience everything in our country. We can learn from the history. And religious systems and also ideological systems cannot be reformed at all. And for example, Christian system in Europe centuries ago, we have this experience in the history, and also Zoroastrian system in Iran before Islam, more than 1,000 years ago, we have this experience too, and also ideological system in China, in Cuba, in North Korea, all of them prove that it's not possible. And there were some people and political activists, and even some of the family members of the authorities in the regime knew that it's just a scheme to deceive the people to stay in power more. But because they didn't have platform and they couldn't talk about it in public, and many of them were killed from the beginning. And so the regime could keep going on this way for many years. But fortunately, since roughly 5 years ago, in 2017, the majority of people protested, and it was a nationwide protest that they shouted that we don't hope anymore to reform the regime. And also, I want to emphasize that before that, many people knew that it's not possible to reform the regime, but they didn't have platform because the most of journalists and media were under the pressure and not under pressure. They were reformists. And so there was no platform, no space to talk for the people who were against this thoughts. And also, we had many protests in these 5 years. But this protest that I would like to call it revolution, because the people call it revolution. This is the biggest protest that we had at least since 43 years ago. And the people are more united, and the people are more mature and more aware. And because in this 43 years ago, the regime has used all tactics to deceive the people can predict that what is the next step of the regime. And so the regime, I think it is at the end of the path, and it's really close to be fallen.
You call it a revolution. If you could tell us what is triggering this revolution. There was a young lady, I believe she was killed there. She may have been of Kurdish. And if you could tell us if there's any significance in that as well.
She was Iranian Kurdish woman. And it is very important because, as I said, from the beginning, many people knew that the Islamic Republic is actually a terrorist group, not a legitimate regime. And they never give up. And so one of them was Kurdish people. And that's why Kurdish people were under pressure and were suppressed by the regime, and many of them were executed. And they experienced and suffered many forms of persecution. Women also were suppressed by the regime, but on the other hand, they never give up, and they keep fighting against the regime. The murder of Mahsa Amini as a Iranian Kurdish woman could connect these two groups were fighting against the regime from the beginning, and they were suppressed by the regime. And it could make incredible union between the people, and it could make a nationwide and popular and spontaneous protest that we witnessed these months.
And to your point, the Iranian regime has tried to separate and persecute people based on ethnicity in the past, yet you're seeing people from all different ethnic groups in Iran coming together. Is that significant right now?
Not just in the past, even until now, the regime is dividing the people not just by their ethnic identity, even by their religious identity, by their sexual identity. And imagine if when you are under pressure, when you are suppressed by the regime, and you want to stand against the regime, and you are looking for freedom. One of the next steps that you must do it is looking for allies. And because it's really hard to fight against a regime alone. But the regime used terrible labels on all groups actually in Iran. And so when you are looking for allies, you cannot find any group. And you feel that you are alone. The regime wanted to create pessimism and also make you depressed, make you weak. I actually give you the weak feeling, and also they want to make you inactive from the beginning. And but now, because after many years, the people, because they are living together, and gradually they can be familiar more with each other, and they can understand that it's not true. These are just some wrong labels, and now they know that the most important reason for their problems is the regime, and now they know that if they don't be united together, they cannot defeat the main enemy.
Generally speaking, how would you say that your average Iranian citizen views this regime?
They see the regime as a terrorist and occupier group which doesn't have any moral principles and wants to make an Islamic world, not just an Islamic Iran. And they are killing children in Iran and outside of Iran, in countries like Syria, that they are funding terrorist groups, or they are cooperating dictatorships. And Also, they know that if they don't make a complete revolution, and even they lose just 1 second, it will make their situation worse. Even 1 second is important because we don't know, and we cannot predict what will happen in 1 second. But the only thing that we can predict is that the worst things are waiting for us, and that's why that the people cannot trust the regime, because it's ridiculous that we want to think that we can reform dictatorships. It's meaningless.
Do you think that the regime right now is worried? There are reports that they may be bringing in the military.
Actually, the regime is terrified, not just worried, and the regime is already using military against the people, and the regime is using its all capacities to suppress the protesters. It's wrong that we think that they have tolerance in front of the protesters. And the people who know about the history of the regime, they know that they don't care about people, and the only thing which is important for them is staying in power more and more.
So I think you might be able to answer this from firsthand experience. Hundreds dead, thousands willing to risk their life taking to the streets in this revolution. Why do you think that is?
I would like to ask your question in a contrary way. Why they shouldn't risk their lives? And if they don't, what can happen to them? And I would like to remind you of shooting Ukrainian passenger plane that had happened by IRGC almost 3 years ago. The passengers were mostly Iranians who were living in foreign countries, and they had come to Iran just to visit their families, and when they were coming back to their homes, they were killed. And they didn't try to make a complete revolution, but they were killed. And it's wrong if we think that just the people maybe will be killed who are trying to make a revolution. No, even ordinary people who don't care about politics, don't care about the regime, they are in danger. And also, I would like to give you another instance. You know, in coronavirus outbreak, that the governments in all countries were trying to save the lives of the people. But what the regime did about the people of Iran, they avoid importing improved vaccines, and they claim that we ourselves can create vaccines. They, as I know, they made 9 vaccines for that, and none of them has license from reliable world organizations like WHO. And after a while, they made this compulsory to get vaccine for many people. And the first time, the people were being killed because of lack of approved vaccines, and after that, the people were being killed because of unapproved vaccines that they were forced to get them.
You're saying people are dying from the Iranian-made vaccine?
Yes, yes. One of them is my father, that he was forced to get the Iranian vaccine, and after 3 days, he was killed, and no one answered us until now that what is the result and why you did it and who is and how what can I do, what we can do, and there is no justice in Iran. We cannot do anything at all. Even we made a file in Iran, but until now, after months, we couldn't reach any result. And I want to say that we don't need to look for suicide bomb to understand that there is a terrorist group in a country, because the regime is using new tactics and new weapons to kill the people, and they are more clever than some groups like ISIS and Taliban, and they know how to kill people. and have their own international relationships with other countries and claim that they are the best regime.
Now, you were imprisoned yourself multiple times. Can you give us an idea of your experience and also what other protesters are facing when they are sentenced or sent away?
All the time, the people who are arrested, they are under pressure in detention centers, in prisons, but in some special times, for example, when the protest is going on, this is a special time for the regime because they feel more dangerous for their power. And so in this time, they suppressed more the arrested protesters. And I can say they use physical torture, psychological torture, and even sexual torture. And we know in the ongoing protest, we have some reports from inside the detention centers, not just in Tehran, in many provinces, that they raped women, men, and children. Many of them were under the age of 18. And they threatened their families to be quiet. And also, I want to say that we don't need to wait just for rape to show an extreme reaction. Sexual violence in all forms are very, very important. Even sexual swearing is very important, because don't compare that when you are in a free situation and someone tell you bad words, and when you are in detention centers, the situation is different. You cannot defend yourself, and all pressure is double for you. And for example, when they use sexual swearing, it gives you this feeling that maybe they want to rape you and you cannot defend yourself. And it's not just some bad words. I want to say that for the people who never experienced being in detention centers or jails, that these tactics to break the protesters are very different from our experience from the same things outside of detention centers and prisons. And also, it's not just about...
What do you mean by that?
For example, when we talk about our experience in detention centers, and when after we are released, and we talk about it to other people, they maybe say that even these things happens outside of detention centers, and this is exaggeration that you are talking about it. It's not very special. But I want to say that if you are in this situation, actual situation, not just imagine, this is different, and we should have more reactions about all of them. We mustn't wait for just rape. We must avoid it from the beginning, because when we would rather to be silent, we give them more bravery, and they think that they can do whatever, and others and international community will be quiet. And I think we have role and we have responsibility in the things and crimes that are happening in jails and detention centers.
Who is speaking out right now? Is it mostly women?
Actually, all people are involved. Men, women, religious minorities, ethnic minorities, and sexual minorities, all of them, because all people are under pressure. And but if you would like to know who is leading the protest, yes, they are women mainly, and also Gen Z. And I think because new generation access to the internet, they cannot tolerate, they cannot accept the pressure of the regime. They cannot accept that the regime wants to decide for their lifestyle, for their privacy, for their thoughts. And that's one of the most important reasons that the regime for a long time is trying to shut down the internet completely forever. the regime is trying for that, but maybe sometimes the people say that your situation is better than North Korea. I want to tell them that the Islamic Republic doesn't know how to be like North Korea. It doesn't mean that they are more kind with the people. They just don't know how to be like North Korea, and they don't have enough facilities for that.
What are the protesters' actual demands?
They demand dignity. They demand freedom, equality, justice. They demand a normal life. They want to know what will happen for them tomorrow. They want to be able to plan for their future. They are not just trying to replace another dictatorship or their own ideology. The nature of this revolution is really different, and they are looking for freedom. They are looking for dignity.
Now, how does the United States government view these protests?
The United States, I think their policy is that at the same time they want to show the regime that we are behind you, and on the other hand they want to tell the opposition that we are behind you too. But it's not correct. You should choose that which side you are. And on the other hand, they claim that, for example, one of American diplomats claimed that we don't see any signs of a revolution in Iran, and it was very disappointing, and it made the people of Iran really furious. And also, another diplomat said that the people of Iran are looking for reform, and it's not true. You know, the people of Iran don't access to the internet, and the internet is really limited, and they don't access to media. They cannot share their own opinions and tell the world that what is their demands. But and actually, I can say that America is a resource for many countries. And when you are spreading misinformation to the world about the people who doesn't have a platform, it's a big crime against humanity. But on the other hand, some of the American diplomats had a meeting with a few Iranian faces to claim that we are behind you, but they didn't take any practical actions. I want to say, take practical action, not just claim. We need practical action.
To your point, the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency in the United States, has been active in interfering or, being active in Iranian politics. Do you think that they are currently involved?
The security organizations don't tell the people that what they are doing. In the future, we can understand that about a part of their activities. That's why now I cannot say anything that CIA is interfering or not. But I can say for sure that the people are protesting and trying to make a complete revolution alone. And this is spontaneous, this is popular, this is nationwide. And if CIA is interfering, maybe it is cooperating with the regime. And we never let the other governments to confiscate our revolution. And but as I said, in the future, we can talk about it, because in the future, they will disclose some of their activities.
Do you think that the potential revival of the Iran nuclear deal will somehow impact these protests? And if so, in what way?
Many people in Iran completely disagree with Iranian deal nuclear. And because it's gives the regime power. And, for example, it will increase the value of currency of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And but the people of Iran, especially in these months, the workers and unions have struck, and they want to weaken the regime economically. But if, on the other hand, the America wants to have a deal with the regime, it means that they are fighting against the people of Iran, and they mustn't do it.
Mary Mohammadi, Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.